quick second and just pass these out. You don't have to fill them out if you even just want to look at them together. We're just looking at them to kind of formulate some answers. It'll help you kind of see some of the differences between what we use, what we do, and what Deb is going to share with us about life in the mission field.
So, what is it to you? And listen, I'm going right now.
If you need a new snack, go ahead and grab one. I might have to take one from the road after we get to see. Thank you. Do you need a snack? If you need a pen, if you really want to write your answers down, you can. I don't know if they are.
So now you should just plan on keeping them.
Also, just so you guys know, these
Is
cards
this a gift?
are
Is
back
this
on
a
the
gift or
snack
do you want it
table.
back?
Huh? Well, you didn't say that, so.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
you-
we'll need the pens back.
We just
Okay,
learned
okay,
this.
so if you've already gotten one of these cards, if you're not staying for the potluck, you can just hand them off to one of the teachers, the mobile task force members. If you are staying for the potluck, we'll have a collection during then.
Yeah, just learned this.
This one's weighted. All right. Sorry. I can't do it with this. We might have a little more time in here. So. Do you have one? You need any? Oh, you didn't get one of the papers? No. They're up on top. Sorry, Karen. Were you up getting a snack? That's probably
No, I wasn't. I'm
Oh, okay.
sitting by the table. I don't even have to
you
get
home
up.
with your DVR?
I just have to do this.
You have to get up.
You were quiet.
That was the best seat in the house back there. All right. So, I'm just here to moderate because apparently that's what Deb thought she wanted. I don't know. Yes, I need to be kept on task. So you just had Tom and Kelly who were sharing with you about cultural aspects of mission life, right? And now Deb is going to kind of give you a little insight into family life, whether that is you and a spouse, you and a whole family, or if you're going by yourself and just kind of friendships and so on. What it's like to, those social emotional connections, I think, is kind of, and the practicalities. And just so you know, Deb and I talked for 2.5 hours and barely touched anything, so I don't think our 15 minutes is gonna totally cover it. Do not hit your head on that shelf.
I know, I
Okay.
can't see it.
We'll start it off nice and big, just like your list. Who do you go to when you have a scriptural or faith-based question when you're in the mission field?
Okay, so when you head to the mission field, you say goodbyes. And a lot of those goodbyes are the people that help sharpen you and that you can go and ask questions. And when you hit the mission field, you are suddenly the one that everybody else goes to with questions because you're the one there who's sharing Jesus, you're talking to them about God, and they have the questions. So if you're not prepared with certain questions, like for us, we lived in Kosovo for 10 years, which is a Muslim country. So if you're not necessarily prepared with how they will interact with the gospel and how they will then compare that to the Quran and say things like, well, you say this, but our Quran says this. There's a lot of questions that end up coming up that you're not quite prepared to answer. So knowing the reliable resources online that you can go to and trust is a really big deal. Also, we had the benefit of a pastor who was a Kosovar, who lived in the capital, that we could go to and ask our questions. But we had to get to the level of being able to ask those questions in Albanian. So there's a time lapse that happens here. So oftentimes it's just you trying to figure out the answers to these questions.
Alright, practicalities. Where are you going for groceries, medications, doctor's appointments, clothes? What's it look like?
So those are all parts of taking care of your family, taking care of your children. And so for us, we lived in a small city in Coastal, and our first place was an apartment up on the 3rd floor. There was no elevator, it was just stairs. So we had to take our backpacks with us to the grocery store, and you just hope that you didn't get too much that didn't fit in the backpack to be able to carry up the steps. And now in Kosovo, it was more the men who would go to the open air markets and do shopping, and the women would go to the grocery stores and do the shopping. So often they were not together. But when we were living up on the 3rd floor to carry stuff up, it was kind of yeah. And then we had Emma, and you throw the stroller in on top of that, and we quickly understood why so many women and children were not going out anywhere. Or with much, they had a lot of determination when they did go out, because they had even more floors of steps to go up than we did.
So, you needed to send Jeff to the open air market, and how did that go? What was it, I mean, was it something he, was he willing to do it?
He was willing to do it, but it was also one of those things where it's like, if he's doing that, then he's not teaching his class or ministering in the way that he's quote unquote supposed to be as the missionary. It's being taken away from his work time. Does that make sense? So it would be like you guys having to take time off from work in order to go grocery shopping with your wife. It just sounds crazy, and that's what we faced. It was a lot of that.
Alright, so, when you need to work through a problem, when you need to vent, when you need to share a concern, when you just want to chat, what does it look like for mom, or anybody, dad, anybody in the mission field?
Alright, so when you guys looked at this list with all these questions of who you would go to for all these different things, I'm sure you wrote down lots of different names. Lots of different people, different places, things like that. I discovered very quickly when we got to the field that saying goodbyes also meant goodbye to those sorts of relationships. And for Jeff and I, it suddenly became, he was my coworker, my girlfriend, my family member, like everything that I would have talked to all these other people about or gone to, suddenly all went into Jeff in our relationship. And it actually put a really big strain on our relationship that I did not realize that I was putting on it. I did not realize that it was even going to be a thing. And so at one point I started going to a MOPS group in the capital, which was about 25 minutes away from our house. It was a drive there, and I was very thankful that I knew how to drive stick, because there was a lot of women who were coming over with their husbands who didn't know, and they were fully reliant on their husbands to take them anywhere and do things. And that was an even bigger strain on relationship, on marriage relationships. So I was able to go to this group, and it was put on by another missionary woman who was there, and Jeff finally was like, okay, that's it. Go with your girlfriends. Go! And to this day, he will do anything to make sure that I am here for Thursday night Bible study. You need your girlfriends. Go!
Would you say that Jeff, I mean, guys are different, we're in a room full of mostly guys, but you had mentioned in the last class about when he had struggles or he needed to talk. So did that work the same for him?
It was different for him, because I don't know how you guys are. You feel like, you may feel like you've got one or two good friends you talk to, or you don't really talk to anybody about anything, but you still talk to people, right? So when Jeff, he ended up with lots of Kosovar men friends within our area. He ended up with Kosovar men friends from our church as well. But for him, it became a struggle of, okay, it's great I have you to talk with, but you're Kosovar. So there are things that are driving me crazy about your country and your culture, and I can't say anything about them to you. So it was very important for Jeff to have a couple of other missionary guys on speed dial that he could just go, okay, yeah, so this just happened to me, and it's driving me insane, and that was his lifeline, was being able to do that with those guys.
Strain on your marriage in terms of the relationship done. But you've got date nights, you've got lots of time to chat, right?
Oh, no. Because when you go to the mission field, you say goodbye to all the people that you know and that you trust. So once you hit the field, when we first got there, doing day nights, it was fabulous. Because we could just go out. It was just the two of us. It was great. And we were there to explore and to learn more about the country. So for us, it was kind of like, oh, let's go explore that restaurant over there, you know? Let's go do this, let's go do that. But we very quickly found out we were not having the deep conversations that we used to. Because when we were in these places, we were also meeting people, talking with them. So very quickly, our date nights turned into ministry times, where we were just reaching out to the people around us. So we actually ended up scheduling a time with Brian Green that we would Skype with him just to give us a time and a date on a calendar that we would sit down and have intentional conversation.
Not with Brian.
No, with each other. Like, we would just talk, he would throw in questions if we were talking about other things, and he was so confused because he was like, wait, so you want to meet with me, but you don't want me to do any counseling? We're like, no, we just need you to be there to make sure that we're talking and actually having conversation. He's like, okay. It's a very odd thing, but for us, it was what was needed for us to be able to have those conversations. And then we thankfully had team members who were there that we trusted, who would willingly watch our kids for us. So they became Grandpa Mark and Grandma Trish, and Uncle Tim and Aunt Karen, and it's just how it was. So we were able to have our date nights when they were willing to take the kids. Of course, you never want to take advantage of that either. So it was a lot of open conversation with them.
I want to hit on something we didn't get to in the last class, but you and I had talked about the other day. When you go to the mission field, you say goodbye to those relationships, and you mentioned something about how life goes on, and you feel a little bit of a disconnect.
Yeah. So you say goodbye to family here in the States, and then you go. And for missionaries going to other countries, everything is new. Like, they're learning every new language, how to shop, where they're living, everything is new. But family back here is still going through everyday life. They're still having their gatherings like they normally would at holidays. They're still able to go to each other's places and encourage each other and help each other out. And when you leave and you say goodbye, you feel that like they're still going on without me. So even when you come back, there's still that feeling of like, oh, well, you guys have had all these other gatherings when we weren't here. Or for me, my grandpa passed away while we were in Kosovo. And I was able to be part of the funeral and things like that because of technology. But when I came back and I had my first family gathering with everybody else, it was like I was hit anew with a wave of grief because they had already had times together where they got used to and they knew that he wasn't there with them. But for me, it was my first time being together with the family without him. And it was really, really hard for me, and it was hard for the family to understand, like, but Dad, this was so long ago. You know, it's like, but I wasn't here then. And so, if you guys know of missionaries who have family members that pass away while they're on the field, that is a really difficult thing because you're grieving by yourself over there while the family's grieving together here, and then you come back and it's like you have stage 2, and it's all over again. So, it's difficult.
Where did that money come from?
I had another fun one for you.
Okay.
And this one just struck me so much when our conversation. How much do you value solitude and privacy? So I'm asking everybody, we asked everybody here kind of, do you do a lot of hosting in your home? Are you an introvert or an extrovert? Would you ever stop by someone's house unexpected who you didn't even know? So for you, as a mom, as a wife, as a woman, what was that like?
Okay, so Tom and Kelly probably talked a little bit about how culture is different in different countries. And here, we basically have a view of our home is our castle. It's the place that we go to relax. It's our place. We make it to our own design and style and desire. In Kosovo, it's not like that at all. The home is first of all for God and then for the guest. So you're down here. So your home has to be ready for guests at all times. There, it's very common to just show up unannounced. And so when you're a mom of littles and you finally get them in the bathtub and you hear the doorbell ring, yes, I admit I ignored that doorbell. Because I'm like, it's just not gonna happen. But they don't do that. They would yank the kids out of the bathroom, run down, and get into and then serve their guests. So coming from a side of the American culture with the way we are versus that side, it was for me it was extremely. There's a lot of pressure to have things set up ready for guests at all time with young children. Yes.
They had mentioned something about time crunch and how time was perceived. Was that the same in Kosovo? Like time strictness versus time fluidity, I guess?
Yes. It's not so fluid as it is down there in Kosovo. But it was not uncommon to have people show up at your house at 9 p.m. for a visit in the summer because they're a later culture. They also had a very high unemployment rate, so the number of people that actually had to get up and go to work in the morning was very few. So why not use the cool of the evening in a summer day to relax together?
And how do you balance having little kids, late nights, taking them out, they start acting up in public? How's that all working?
I can say I did not handle that very well. It was very difficult for me to try to, and for me it had a lot to do with taking care of the kids at bedtime because we would have people show up in the evening and the kids needed to go to bed. So here I was as the hostess having to go and put the kids to bed, and I was coming off as extremely rude to the people who were there. But I needed to get the kids in bed. They couldn't just stay up and run around, and it became a really, really difficult for me with the other ladies because they did not understand our kids getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning because their kids would sleep until 10. Like, and they'd be like, well, just keep them up late, they'll sleep in. They never did. We tried it. They never did. I just pulled my hair out more. So it was a difficult thing.
You talk about third culture. Is that kind of the kind of thing you mean?
No. No, a third culture is a little bit different. Yeah. So it was very difficult, and even it caused me to feel like I was missing out on a lot of things. And I know that God took me through a great big path, down a great big path during that time to help me to realize that it wasn't that I was missing out on something, I was serving in a different way. I was serving my children and my family. I was just not serving them at that point in time, and it was okay because there was a constant tension between being with your family and serving family and making sure they're growing and they're healthy, and the tension between, but I am sent here as a missionary. I could be doing this back in America. What am I doing here? I was sent as a missionary. So I am the only one who's going to be telling these people about Jesus. So there was that constant tension that's pulling between being there for your family, raising your children, being there for your husband, and serving and ministering to the people that were there.
Did you use any daycares, or were you always with them?
Well, once Emma got old enough to be in preschool, we put her in the local school as first year kindergarten. It was very odd for them. They don't have preschool. and the daycares were only in the capital, and it was very frowned upon to use a daycare because the family unit over there is very different. It's very strong, highly valued. Most of the time, the elderly parents lived with the youngest son. When you had children, each one of the boys had certain things that they were assigned to do. The oldest one was given all the money to to go to school and get the highest paying job, to then support the family, and the youngest one was the one who was expected to stay home and be the one who cared for the parents. So that was also difficult for us when they discovered that Jeff was the youngest. He was looked down upon by some of the Kosovars because he was not here taking care of his parents. He was over there. They were like, oh, well then is your brother living with your parents taking care of them? He's like, no, they're living on their own. They're living by themselves. Yeah, they're living by themselves. Like, it was very difficult for them to grasp.
So they have an inverted culture shock.
Yeah.
Before Jeff gets in here and tells us we have to leave, I just want to hit, so we have missionary families from all over the world that come. They come for a day, an hour, luncheon. How can we best support them? Obviously, we pray for them, financial support, but when they come, what's that? What's that we need to do?
Okay, well, you did mention that obviously we pray for them. So I would really love for you guys, when you pray for the missionaries, pray for their marriage relationships. Pray for them to be able to take time to just have real deep conversations between the two of them. It's something that just, life gets busy and missionary work is very overwhelming at times. And that's usually one of the things that goes downhill first. Also pray for them with their children. I don't know how many of you have dealt with different issues with each one of your kids, but when you're on the mission field and you have an issue with a child, it's a lot of times it can be make or break it. So pray for them as they go through these different things with their kids. And when they come back here, just know that the kids especially, they're not used to this at all. So they have parents maybe who are Americans. So their parents are used to this kind of thing because they grew up here. But they are living and growing up in a culture that's completely different. So they're getting American culture at home from their parents, but not from really what's going on around them.
Social America.
So they become a third culture kid. So they have a little bit of America and a little bit of the country that they're in. And so all missionary kids are third culture kids because they have a third culture, which is a combination of the two. So when you talk to them, don't talk about things that you know exactly are American. Like, well, what's your favorite kind of ice cream? Say, what's your favorite kind of dessert? What's your favorite sweet thing? You know, and know that maybe when they come, going out and getting soft serve ice cream is something that is really special to them because they have no idea what it is. Maybe they just get gelato. You know, that's so. All right, Jeffrey is going to.
It's pretty bad when Jeff is on time and we're the ones running late.
It's
It's hard to take family life and combine it all.
Thank you.